It's January the 9th, and this is my latest update here. Situation is developing as we go. The Twitter, of course, the big news is banned President Trump from its site, and I guess this is the end. Everybody was expecting it was going to happen after he left office on the 20th, but I guess they've moved up the schedule a little bit. And so that's kind of that for the moment on that. The other issue, of course, is now the whole issue of the riot at the Capitol is leading to, I guess, the Democrats in the House are going to impeach Trump another time. It doesn't. We'll see. There's no real point in that since he's about to leave office and he's already effectively ceased fighting to get back in. It's over with. Biden has been picked. So it is kind of incredible that they're trying to do this, but presumably the motivation is that if he's actually convicted, then he can be ascribed to never hold office again, so he can't run in 2024. And I think that's probably the real motivation here. On the other hand, it doesn't seem very likely, regardless of who's actually running the Senate at the time that the event could occur, that he'll actually be convicted, since obviously he really is not guilty of anything. In reality, which gets, of course, to the riot itself, which I've kind of addressed. Increasingly, it's beginning to look like that what happened is that some extreme elements essentially infiltrated or attended the rally and on their own volition decided to go and attack the Capitol. I've heard that there is some evidence of online planning of some sort, and on the other hand, there's a lot of claims that Antifa elements was involved. I think one BLM member was there, although we don't know what the individual actually did other than being there. He did go into the Capitol, though. But I think that essentially, I think the biggest factor is probably what I mentioned in my previous video, that what former Attorney General Barr referred to as a witch's brew of extremist groups. Before Donald Trump ever showed up on the political scene in the 2016 election, there have been a lot of groups out there, individuals that hold a variety of rabid positions, anti-government types, the so-called sovereign citizen movement, and so forth. And I think that probably it may be even other extreme groups. There are a lot of different little fringe outfits out there. The Boogaloo guys, I don't know if they were pretty involved because it looked like it was an older crowd for the most part. Oh, there are younger people there too, and I wouldn't be surprised you couldn't find some of them in there too. The point being that these extreme groups have nothing to do with the Trump agenda, with the Republican Party, with the conservative movement as such in the mainstream. These are just like radical left-wing terrorists are, at least used to be in the Democratic Party, although they're kind of a bit more welcoming to certainly of them now than they were previously. But that's been an evolution in the last few years where they welcomed these extreme elements in as much. So I'll get into details about that. It's a long story and a lot of nuances. Point is that that there probably were militia elements involved, and I think there's a bunch of Trump people who basically were followers. That once they breached the Capitol, they went ahead and walked on in. I think most of the damage were done by the extreme elements themselves, and actually, but people on the congressional side just trying to prepare to defend themselves, which is perfectly within their rights. In terms of breaking up furniture to get clubs and stuff. But what I'm getting at is that essentially this is an extreme element and the Trump movement, Republican Party should not be blamed for it. We should reject all blame for it totally. And obviously that we're already moving ahead to investigate and prosecute the individuals that can be identified. So, we can get into the question, was the rhetoric a little too heated at the speech beforehand? Why did we have a rally that day when it was a foregone conclusion? Why did Trump think there was any chance that Pence could somehow stop the certification? I don't understand how it got to this point. It was pretty clear cut to me, and that once the Supreme Court had refused to take all the cases, and the third time they actually scheduled it to after the 22nd, I think, was the last I heard. So in other words, and so that kind of means there was no real chance of success. So I thought the whole thing was sort of a protest, but I mean, so like I said, this was very destructive to us and really not what we want. But let's go into what really is now a more important situation, I think, than that. That's in the past. What is in the future is this mass censorship that big tech is now imposing in alliance with the Democrat Party. And I've said all along, that's been the beginning of these videos, that has been my concern in this election, why I've been as active as I've been here. Has been to address this threat of the coming fascist state. I use the term fascist not in the sense it's right wing or left wing, but simply meaning an alliance between government and corporations to control the country. And I think that's what we're beginning to see here. These are basic allies of the Democrat Party, and they are now trying to basically skew the political discourse in order to favor Democrat political victories. So what we need to do, well, first of all, I think at this point there's not any real hope in my mind at the moment that Congress is going to do any reform of Section 230, because why would the Democrats want to do that? I mean, they've got the power. Do they want to give it up? I doubt it. The real avenue forward, in my opinion, is through the courts. I mean, what we need is lots of lawsuits against these tech companies and eventually try to get it aggregated into a big class action lawsuit in a favorable court. It's the way the liberals have done it forever. It's the way it needs to be done. You need to get it somewhere in the Fifth Circuit, in my opinion, because there's a good chance you might get a win there. And if you do get a win in the Fifth Circuit, there would probably be a countervailing decision in some other circuit, so it would go to the Supreme Court. And I think, in spite of everybody's complaining about, they didn't overturn the fraudulent votes and all that, I think this is a sort of a different thing, that there was never enough time to really carry that process out within, what was it, about 6 weeks between Election Day and the certification day of the 14th of December. But here, this could go on for months or years, and probably would. My point is, yes, the courts can overturn Section 230. They've overturned traditional marriage. They've overturned all the other discriminatory laws, the sodomy laws, all that sort of thing. They've overturned all this stuff. They can do it if they want to do it. And I think that the majority of the court is still for free political speech. And that's what's being restricted here. This is not about restricting violent groups. And the fact of the matter is, I think that what happened on the 6th of January was, in fact, an aberration. It probably won't be repeated. One thing, the security will be pretty tight. I mean, they're bringing in 6,200 National Guard now, like something's really going to happen on Inauguration Day. I think that that's way overreaction, just like there was underreaction on the 6th. But I think that's the path ahead. And of course, we need to get people with enough money, groups with enough money to pursue that. Right now, I mean, on Parler, as I understand, they're taking down the apps. Of course, the key thing is people need to learn just to bookmark the Parler app, and we can get around that. The question is, does it get deplatformed? And that's a much more serious issue. That is what happened to Gab back some time back. And I think they've gotten reestablished somehow. So, but it's a very difficult situation, and we'll have to see what President Trump does after he's out of office. Does he work to try to create his own mechanism, if you will, or some other groups? I mean, this is, as I say, this is an ongoing situation, and we need to be very cognizant of it. The one thing I also want to emphasize, which I keep seeing, is every time some group on the right, some individual, says or does something, we're almost acting like our own cancel culture. I mean, because Fox News didn't take as hard a line as somebody else, well, I'm not going to watch Fox News. Or if, they called Arizona prematurely, and so forth. Because, I mean, obviously, while ultimately their prediction did come out, and we're talking about just in terms of votes being counted, the fact of the matter is that they waited forever to call North Carolina, which was a much larger margin of victory. So it seems to me like there is some bias there, but I don't think it's a corporate bias as much as just individual programs are very strong for one side or the other. Some of them are kind of never Trump, Cavuto maybe, and others are very strong, for Trump. I mean, for instance, Hannity or I guess Ingram is pretty much there. And of course, so my point is, but the important thing is that Fox News is backed by News Corporation, which does have a lot of money and corporate power, and does have the lawyers that can fight things, where a lot of these smaller outfits could get real problems. I understand now Dominion's filing a massive lawsuit against Sidney Powell. Well, she always said that she welcomed it to see what the discovery would reveal, so I guess maybe we'll find out more about Dominion, huh? Or will she settle out of court in order to recant the position? We'll see how that turns out. So that's what's kind of in play right now. And the key thing is we all need to send loving messages to Lisa Murkowski to tell her, please don't leave us and join the Democrats. The last thing we need is give them 51 overt votes. I mean, we want to keep Kamala Harris tied down, breaking ties in the Senate. We don't want them to have to do it without that. I mean, don't say anything mean to her either. It's got to be friendly because, again, these people can really mess us up big time. If the filibuster's ended, they can pass just about anything they want, and things that'll be irretrievable. If the filibuster remains in place, only the most radical things won't happen. And of course, losing the elections in Georgia have opened up that possibility that I outlined in the nuclear option video some time back, which is a real risk. I call this the year of living dangerously. We'll see what happens next, but so stay tuned. And the good thing I think about my channel is I have so few subscribers, I'm probably not much of a target yet. And of course, I don't really talk inflammatory stuff very much either, but I think we are talking about the real issues that we face. So that's all for now, and until next time.